My name is Andreas, and my talk today is about culture hacking, and that's a topic that why I'm talking about that topic is because I'm really passionate about it. We have already heard a little bit about culture, leadership, and all these kinds of things, and I'm glad to see that Bosnia is having a conference where we have so many advanced topics. An Agile conference so many years after the Agile Manifesto is really should be more like in these topics like culture, like leadership, and not the basic stuff anymore. So I want to give you a little bit of my an insight into my journey. And in the late 90s, I found myself in the middle of an extreme programming project. XP was by then, so the term Agile was not coined for software development, at least not at this time. It was those methods were just called lightweight methods, and it was kind of a cool thing. And as Boris said, the same happened to me. This was kind of a hostile environment. It was kind of give it a try environment and try it and figure it out if it works. And actually, it worked. To be very honest, the things we did back in 1998 was very much different to the things that we do today. So if I tell you about the practices that we did by then, you would probably say, but that's not Agile. Actually, we delivered already in 2 weeks, in 2-week increments. So that's what we tried. We had a daily build, not a continuous, it depends on the frequency. And all these kinds of things. So from my background, I'm a software developer. I originate from software development now 25 years in this industry, and I have founded several companies. Today, I'm not doing software development anymore. I even have no strict relationship to software development. I'm more interested in all organizational stuff, Scrum and Agile outside software industry also. But let me get you a little bit back what I did. A couple of years later, in 2001, I founded my first company where we were in product development. We invested our own money into developing a product. We were young boys doing this kind of thing, and of course we had to think twice. I had also had a time where I was working for a German ERP vendor, a very big one. And I had some data what worked and what worked not. So we invested our own money, and I thought, okay, we give this XP thing a chance. And 6 months later, the money was gone, and we just arrived at what could be called a target. We did not know that the product would look like this as we designed it in front of, and that was my first steep learning curve. 6 months after we started the company, the product looked very much different from what we anticipated it to be. The demands and the requirements from our customers looked very much different from what we thought they were. Okay, so that was my first idea that Agile is really a great thing, and it's much more to what we need. Then came the Agile Manifesto. And then I started a couple of years later, sold this company, started a new company where we also started doing consulting. And that was also the time in 2005, where I was thinking of helping others doing it, like the manifesto says, right? And this was also around the time where I met Boris. And I started doing trainings and so on, and this was also the time where I traded passion for glory because I had to earn money. There was a family, an ever-growing family coming up. There was a house, there was loans to pay, and so on. So I realized, okay, that what I was, and maybe the majority of people at that time considered to be Agile, has a serious impact because we still need to earn money. Okay, so there is a balance that many of you probably may have struggled with. that doing all this freedom stuff like that, there's a monetary constraint to all of this. But the next company that I founded was Objectbay, was a software development company, and I started, okay, how can I combine those two things? That is very important for me to really create a successful company that not only trains people and makes money with training, but also does software development in a really good agile way and earns a lot of money with that. So I started doing this, and I started, of course, involve all my friends from the agile community, how to do this, and you know how the whole thing works. And I started to lay out what could be the values, what could be the culture for this company. And I started to lay out a set of values. These values are still on Objectbay's website, but I had to figure out, and I had to learn a couple of years later, these were my values, not the values of my employees. The company grew into 10, 20, 30, and 40 employees, and the larger the company grew, the larger the employee base became, the harder it became to really get the culture done. As Boris already said, you cannot set a culture from the top down. You cannot. I personally believe that even the values is something that you can lay out, but you need either get the right people or help those people that you have. I mean, I don't know how it's in Bosnia, but in Austria, where I live, and in the rest of Europe, as far as I know, the war for talent is really high. So you have to deal with what you have. Of course, you can create a company that is attractive to many people, right? But I personally had a hard time considering, oh, this guy is not 100% agile mindset, so let's pull him out. That was not my thing. So I learned that culture is the most important thing. And before I go into deep with culture, let me go back to the Agile Manifesto. I assume that all of you guys here know the Agile Manifesto, correct? Is there anybody in here who does not know it? Okay, so my question to you, I want to involve you a little bit. I don't want to talk alone. What is the most important sentence of the Agile Manifesto? People on, what was that?
Uncovering better ways to develop software and learning how to do it and help others.
We are uncovering, that's the first sentence of the manifesto. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others doing it. Okay? What does that mean? What does this particular sentence mean to you? We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it.
Active, dynamic.
The way we uncover is by doing it. So we don't get, is there anybody from McKinsey in here? No. We don't get those big consultancies in who tell us how we need to do the job, right? We are uncovering. And that is, for me, it took many years for me to realize that, to be very honest. But that is, for me, the most important sentence of the Agile Manifesto. Of course, there's a couple of other individuals go first, right? Concrete results go first. What else? Change goes first. Collaboration goes first, and so on. There's a 12 principle set also on the second page of the manifesto. And these are things that already go into what we call culture. Okay? So, what is the difference between doing agile and being agile? Anything from your side?
Doing agile is about techniques and possibly strategy, but being agile is about culture.
So in these days, I'm also still passionate, but I still earn money by helping companies doing agile, right? So implementing agile, And what I see today is very, very often companies just doing Agile because the boss says, hey, we have to do Agile. Agile is the new kid on the block. In 80% of the companies, it is that way that there is a top-down driven approach to, which is not the worst thing, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's kind of a command. Okay, let's do Agile. I have been serving a couple of years, 5 or so, in India, where I have learned about Bollywood movies. Anybody seen Bollywood movies? Yeah? Good, okay. And what I have seen very often is when I coined the term Bollywood Scrum. You know what? You get an idea what Bollywood Scrum is? It looks like Scrum, right? And the thing about Bollywood movies is they are so artificially strange, just playing in front of super nice scenes, and you know there's the mountains and everything is fine, everything is good. We're dancing. And very often I come to companies and see something like they're doing their daily scrums, 9 a.m., okay? They are telling to their scrum master, I switched it off, sorry. They're telling to their scrum master that they, what they did yesterday, what are the impediments they have, and what are they going to do today, and stuff like that. Okay, that looks like Scrum, but maybe that is not Scrum, okay? And we have learned, I think Laura wants to say something. When we look at agile transformations fail. And I'll just put something here. I have to say some more. I typically don't use slides. I used to draw on my surface, but it's not possible here. So I just put up the picture. This is a picture of another session, but it's pretty much the same. Maybe the second page will differ. So when we look at agile transformations, someone said 80% is like this. What are the typical failures that we can see? Why, or for what reason, do agile transformations fail, or in some sense fail?
They accept it as like a process that by the
Exactly. It's just another process. Okay, you do this, what I call cargo cult or Bollywood Scrum, agile, right? You just execute a set of rules. Every day you have to do your daily Scrum, then you do 2-week sprints, and so on and so on. But that is, what is missing there? What is missing? Being agile, right? Being agile is missing. So being agile is about mindset. Another reason that I found is lack of management commitment. When I come to a customer, to a new engagement, what we ask for, the very first thing is a half a day with top management. And then we explain them what happens if you do agile. What happens if you will become agile? And that will change your entire organization. I guess many of you have already experienced that. It's a cultural change. And the organization needs to understand that. Resistance. We are, as humans, we are wired to resist, right? That is our very natural behavior. We are wired to resist, and there's, by the way, a very, very good book called Wired to Resist, if you just want to read that one. Another thing that I have seen in many years of helping companies becoming agile is unmanaged change process. There is a lot of change going on, especially if you deal with larger organizations, where you have very large structural hierarchies and so on, then it's difficult for them to change. So there is typically we have 2 change methods that are today applied. One is Kotter, many of you maybe have heard of it. Senge is another one, and there's a couple of others, but the point that I want to make is you need to have management involved in the change, something like a change team, an agile transition team, something like that. That makes a lot of sense. Hardcore, yeah. I have seen companies doing hardcore agile, okay? Day 1, bam. Yeah? It doesn't work. I mean, it could work. Yeah? It could work in one company, but that does not necessarily mean it works in another company. And in many cases, it will not work because people don't have the mindset. That is nothing that happens from day one to day two or with the flick of a switch. It doesn't work that way. People don't change their mindset within a second. And there's one thing that also a term that I love to use is called organizational viscosity. You know what viscosity is? Yeah, viscosity is you use this for measuring liquids. How slow they flew, how slow they flow, okay? That's viscosity. And if you look into larger organizations or many organizations, they have a high viscosity. If you put like energy in, and what happens? Nothing. I can tell you a story. I was one of the 3 lead coaches in the German telecom transformation. And it's not a secret that the German telecom is a large corporation. And that was one organization that I call with a very large viscosity. We have put in, I don't know exactly, I think 30 or 40 coaches. So we have put in megawatts of power supply, right? And nothing happened for months. But at one day, you know, the super tank ship was like moving slowly, started to turn. Actually, after 3 years, we made some changes, and it was also a success. Okay, so when we talk about a change, there was a poll from Gallup, and they say 50 to 70% of all change initiatives fail. Fail to launch, fail to scale, or fail to sustain. That is strange, isn't it? 50 to, they even have in there, there's a case study out there, you can Google it. I think they talk about something like $5 billion US, what these failures cost. That is enormous amount of money. Okay? So the question now boils down to how to change an organization. Correct? So the job, if you do an agile transformation, is how can we change the organization? So question to you, whom can you change? Come again? Ourselves. The only person you really actively can change is the person that you brush the teeth every morning, right? That's the only person you can change. So am I saying that it's impossible to change an organization? No, that's not what I'm saying. But how can we, if we are not able to change, I'm not able to change you, that will not work. I mean, it worked in some in some certain environments that we don't want to talk about, but voluntarily this person will not change if I impose change onto him. So how can we accomplish this? What can be done? Be an example, yeah. Lead by example.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
To create our own culture bubble.
Yeah. I don't like the word bubble. Bubble tend to explode. Yes, you're right. It's the environment. The only thing you can do is change the environment that people work in, that people live in, that fosters change. Okay? And that is the hardest part of, when we talk about Agile, I personally believe the hardest part of Agile is the mindset. Because we talk about mindset. Of course, there is change methods I talked about. You can look out what methods are there. But then the next question that arises, what do we change when we talk about the environment? Who knows that? People know it. Maybe, right? You could be the agile samurai, the one who knows everything, and you probably know a lot of things, and you could say, okay, this is the thing that we need to change. We need to do this and this and that. There's some sort of truth to it. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of experience, a lot of things that people can do to foster agile thinking, correct? But at the end of the day, who knows that? Who knows what? Nobody knows. Because it's very much related to your particular organization. I cannot tell you how your organization will look like when you start doing Agile and when you have been living Agile, understanding Agile, living Agile for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I will not be able to tell you. That's a dynamic system of people and their interactions. Okay? And again, there's a common set, ground set, and that's called culture. Okay? So, there was a famous say from Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. What does that mean? When I heard this sentence the first time, I thought very much of it, and the idea behind that is that whatever the strategy of the company is, culture will always win. That means if your boss says, this is like we function, like we work, and that is also what I realized in my company. I imposed a couple of values, a couple of things that we do. This is how we work, this is how we live, how we think about our customers, and so on. But actually, the culture that was established, the culture that was there in the company, sometimes bought into this strategy and sometimes not. Sometimes was against it. So, what can we do about culture? Culture is key. I think that is not a new finding. Culture is key. It's about mindset. It's about attitude, and how to change culture. And I don't claim to be the coiner of this word, but I'm using this culture hacking thing now since 2014 when I started reading a couple of books about this. One of the books that made my worldview of organizations completely different was Frederick Luce, Reinventing Organizations. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend read this book. There is also an illustrated version, which is not, because the original version is like, it's really a thick textbook that is a little bit theoretic. There's an illustrated version out there that you can read in, let's say, a week or so. And this made me think differently about culture. And now, yes, we're on an Agile conference. The room setting is not really very Agile. Honestly, that's a kind of a feedback to you. No, normally we have table discussions. I would like to have a table discussion, but I would like to ask you now, as part of my keynote, give yourself, let's do rows, okay? Give yourself 2 minutes, let's say 3 minutes, and think what resembles an Agile culture, and come up with a couple of words. Couple of things. Yeah? Let's just have this discussion. 3 minutes. I guess we don't have sticky notes. So what makes an Agile culture? Okay. So what keywords do we have? Yes, please.
Transparency.
Transparency, very good.
Networking over hierarchy.
Networking over hierarchy, very good.
And continuous planning over annual budgeting.
Continuous planning over annual budgeting, very good. Anything else?
Self-organization.
Self-organization, very good, very important thing. Trust, thank you. What's that? Getting away from ego, correct. Continuous improvement. Same. Difficult one, yes, very difficult one. Putting the higher, thank you. Responsibility, that's exactly the whole thing. Yeah. Let's talk about self-organization a little bit. What would be characteristics of a self-organizing team? Empowered, efficient and effective, yeah. Cross-functional, very good, thank you. Autonomous. Willing to experience. That's openness, yes. Mm-hmm. Allowed to fail, yes. Anything else?
It requires clear leadership.
Yes. But whatever that means, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. So self-organization is, in my personal view, one of the secret success, secret sauces for Agile becoming into really an organization being lived, right? Living Agile. And it's the hardest thing that I have. I've been, so I became a Scrum trainer in 2008 and also a Scrum coach in that time. And since then, I was coaching a lot of organizations, and I have seen so many organizations who were heavily struggling for 10 years now and still struggle with this self-organization thing. Even in my own company, where I, for many years, thought, okay, should be the number one Agile company, at least in Austria, we had really struggles with self-organization. Cross-functional, someone said, yeah? That's very important to create a cross-functional team. One thing for me was now missing in this poll, that we don't have, that we have a collective responsibility, right? What does that mean to you, a collective responsibility? We win together, we fail together, okay. Anything else? What does collective responsibility mean? Exactly. It's about the team being responsible, not an individual. Who has testers on their team? Okay, thank you. What does that mean if you have testers on your team? Who is responsible for testing? Why do you have testers? Exactly. Okay, that was a sense of joking, but there is a truth to it. Many organizations that I meet, they still have dedicated testers. Sometimes they call them even resources, a word that I really hate. Humans are not resources. Testers have the responsibility of testing, correct? So what do you do if you add additional roles to a self-organizing teams? I'm done, I'm the developer, now you tester, it's your job, okay? So you kill in the very moment of introducing the separate roles inside a self-organizing team. In this very moment, you kill self-organization. The team will not have the chance to allow it, okay? And that is a very crucial thing that classical organizations really have issues with. So we have discussed a couple of things here. So this is just one from one session. Let me just get you through. So when we talk about culture hacking, this is not the single truth. There's a couple of ideas that we just could figure out. It's about somebody said a shared vision. To be very honest, I'm not a big fan of this vision thing, because a shared vision can only come from a community. And I see very often people designing their vision. Oh, I have this idea, this should be the vision. And then from the vision, everything boils down. So a shared vision could only happen if you buy into that vision. If you say, oh, that's a good vision, so I want to be with this project. Then the shared vision works. A shared vision for me is more like a thing that emerges from a self-organizing team. Very hard to establish, very hard to figure out, right? Another principle that we have in Agile is emergence. You understand? So there is, the red ones here is tools. And that is my key message to you. When we talk about culture hacking, there is no master plan. There is no big plan for this is how you change the culture in your organization. Culture hacking is hacking because you have a lot of tools in place. And you need to figure out in your particular organization, what is cultural elements that need to change and which tool shall we apply in order to create an environment to change it, okay? So all of your people buy into it. And there is a lot of tools out there that have been dragged into, in my personal view, the wrong direction. Boris already said about OKR, objectives and key results. A thing that was coined by Andy Grove, was in Hungarian, by Intel, at Intel. And this is a very powerful tool that can be used to create focus. But it can also be used very, very into a wrong direction. I have also read this book, I think Boris mentioned it, this OKR master thing. I think this is one of the biggest bullshit, that I have ever read. And it's totally different from what Andy Grove meant. If you want to look at OKR, I think it's a good concept. Look at the original literature by Andy Grove. Or by his, I forgot his name, the one who was, thank you. He was his personal assistant, I think, for many, many years. Yeah. So when we have been talking about focus. Focus is a very important thing. There's one tool. This was just this team worked out. Any other tools that you could figure out how to get more focus in an organization? That is, by the way, one of the things that I also have seen unfocused organizations. Right? We have this project, and we need to... Almost all the organizations that I had to deal with have this sort of demand and this sort of capacity, right? And that does not work. Huh? If you always have to deal with this high demand and your capacity is as low as this will not work. You need to bring this into balance. So focus is one thing. Prioritization. Huh? Also a very much an emphasis in Agile is another tool that you can use to get more focus. Self-organization, we have been talking about that. Safety. For self-organization, you need safety. I think this is also something that you have already seen in your organizations, what a critical role safety could play. There's this thing called psychological safety. You might have heard about that. Okay, obviously we don't have the time to go into all of this thing. We had trust. What can be done to build trust? What could be a tool for trust building? Psychological safety is one. Come again? Transparency, could be. Not necessary. It depends on where your team is. If you put in transparency, a hardcore transparency into a team that is still struggling with fear of conflict, it could be a problem. So when you do this, you need to understand the relationship things have to each other. There's a book from Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. You might have heard about that one. That's also a very, very practical, very good tool to understand, okay, how are dysfunctions of a team interrelated? You cannot resolve fear of conflict unless you have built trust. And trust building is really as easy as it is. It's like, how do you get the trust of one person? Come again? Show vulnerability. Very good. So you have there's only one chance. Give trust to earn trust, right? That's on a personal level. Psychological safety is the same thing on the team level. Okay? Sorry. Empowerment, we had that one, right? That's also a very much a tool. Many organizations I see struggling with that. Why? Why do organizations struggle with that? Fear. Fear of what? Thank you. Fear of losing control. Exactly. Right. So that is if you look at the organization development by Frederick Laloux, there is this going from red to amber to orange to green, and green is the first stage where organizations start developing, breaking down their hierarchies. Hierarchies is a wonderful thing when we go back into history. So just to give you a very, very brief introduction to that, the red organizations are organizations that are driven by power, by fear. It's like tribal militaries. It's like the wolf pack. There is one leader, and this leader leads with power, right? Like the alpha wolf. There were a couple of improvements to the amber organizations, which started to have processes in place, right? Which started to have division of labor. And then came red organizations. The color scheme is just given by this guy. So what I wanted to say is that these organizations develop over time. And they started 10,000 before Christ to develop certain things. And now we are breaking down again things, like hierarchies, okay? One of the things that I like to mention is responsibility. There's another very, very good thing. I really love the responsibility process. By the way, this is my company teaches this. If you want to get a lecture on that, this is a 5-step process which helps your organization create this responsibility thing. A very good thing. But there's a lot of other tools, and I don't want to stick to one single tool. What you need to understand is agility provides you with a tool belt, okay? And this tool belt is full with tools. And mastering agility is about understanding which tool to use in which situation. And there is no golden rule book for that. I'm sorry to tell you that. And there's no master plan, first to this, second to this, to this. It's about practicing, it's about learning, it's about trying, it's about failing. Yeah? And if I go back and now close my session with what I have learned, it's the same thing. In my journey, I have practiced, I have tried a lot of things. Many of them did not work, a steep learning curve. Of course, there are consultants, there are coaches, agile coaches that can help you and your organization to deal with this change. But at the end of the day, it's still you and your organization that need to adopt the change and learn how to deal with it. Okay, I'm really keen on hearing Nicola. Is it Nicola? Is your session? No, she's not listening to me. Yasmina, sorry, not Nicola. Session about your culture is probably so. Let me pitch a little bit for her session. There's a lot of things that we still need to learn. And okay, 1 minute left. Just for a commercial break. No, I will be publishing a book next year. 2/3 or so. Describing all this tool belt, all of those things. The title will be Culture Hacking, and yeah, glad to hear from you. If you have any questions, I'm here. I will be also roaming around on the conference, so let's get involved in some talks, which is very much about Agile. But if there's one question left, I'm glad to hear it. Okay, so become culture hackers and hack your organization's culture. Thank you very much.